Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'll be talking about transformation, and that is how I'm using HDR merge inside of Luminar Neo to really transform my images and my results. As a quick bit of background, I've been doing HDR photography for about 15 years, and I've been teaching my techniques on my website and in person and on YouTube for almost 10 years now. I've been fortunate enough to have my HDR images published in multiple publications, both regional and national, and I've got some hanging in private homes and public businesses. But when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to use a camera. I didn't understand HDR. I didn't understand photography. I had literally no background in it. And what I've done over the years is just refine my technique and edit and practice and edit and practice and refine. And what I've done with this bundle is brought together everything that I know about it to help you get better images as well. The thing with HDR, of course, is that it sometimes has a bad reputation because of the over-the-top type images that were popular probably 10 or 12 years ago. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how you can get beautiful, vibrant, and natural looking results, get all the benefits of HDR, and avoid all the pitfalls. The pitfalls are things like excessive halos, over-the-top colors, or details, or a really weird distribution of light. Let me show you. I've got a photo here, and this is a single exposure. It's a raw file. It's got spots and everything. And what I want to do is drag this over to the HDR merge window and get started. Now I end up with a base HDR file that looks like this. There's actually a better distribution of light. It's not quite as shadowy and dark in certain areas, but there are absolutely parts of the image that need some refinement. So I'm going to come in and do my basic starting approach, which I do on every image in Luminar Neo, whether it's HDR or not. And that is I go into develop and make some adjustments. I do like to hit the J key just to see where I may have areas that are blown out or completely black. The little blue spots that you see mean they're completely black. I don't really mind that, to be honest. What I do mind is places that are blown out. And as you can see, the highlights are under control. That would be this area back here. If I were to drag these highlights to the right, you'll see they start to get filled in with red. We want to avoid that red. I like to pull that down, either completely gone or just really low. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the J key for now. And I want to finish here in develop. I want to add a tiny bit of warmth and a tiny bit of tint. It was a beautiful sunset, and I'm going to bring that back. And that's one of the beautiful and powerful things about HDR is that you really get a lot of impact on not just the light, because it really is about the light, but also the color. I do like my colors. I just want to make them realistic and natural, which is really what my HDR bundle is all about. Now, while I'm at it, I highly recommend that you use super contrast. And in my bundle, there's an ebook that will be included. And I talk about some of the favorite tools that I use and what order I use them in. But I want to make sure I'm keeping a good amount of control over these highlights and these shadows. So you can see I've just activated the J key again, and the highlights are looking great. I mean, I'm not really losing anything there, which I love. And I want to brighten a little bit. So midtones is a great way to kind of balance out the light and to create a little bit brighter image because there's so many midtones. So if you increase the contrast in the midtones, you can see as I drag it to the right, the image is getting a little bit brighter. I'm going to turn off the J key again. Again, I don't mind a little bit of that blue showing me that I have some areas that are completely black, but that's okay. If you look at that before and you look at it now, I think the light is looking fantastic. Now that I've got the light under control, I'm just going to do a little bit with the color. I want to go into toning and hit the highlights a little bit. I'm going to go into color balance, and in the shadows, I'm actually going to add a little bit of blue, which tends to create a little bit more shadow and dark area because I like to have contrast in my photos. That's part of creating a natural looking HDR. One thing that HDR does really well is even out that distribution of light. But if everything is lit up perfectly, it doesn't look natural. And so adding a little bit of shadow back really helps with that. And that's something that I talk about in this bundle as well. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a red into the highlights and a tiny bit of magenta simply because I like those colors and those highlight areas. That's going to go into the sky and part of the reflection and enhance the look of that sunset. Speaking of sunset, I'm going to jump into landscape, grab golden hour, and give that just a little bit of a boost. And one thing that I recommend is not overdoing it with color. That's the thing about HDR. Colors can get really vibrant, and those over-the-top images of 10 years ago, many of them were just, hey, every color was saturated. And again, something I talk about in the bundle that you want to avoid. I've added a little bit more warmth there, which I think looks pretty nice, adding that golden hour. And then I'll often go back to develop just in case and see if I need to do anything else, maybe a tiny bit more contrast, maybe a slight bit on highlights and shadows, just a little tiny maneuver there. I can barely see it. I kind of don't think you can see it in the video, but overall my photo's looking good. And one last little tool I like to employ for a little bit of mood and a little bit of shadow is mystical. And that's simply because it does create a slightly higher contrast image, which means the dark parts get a little bit darker, but also the bright parts get a little bit brighter, but it also creates a little bit of mood and atmosphere. So if you look at that before and after, you end up with, I think, a really nice photo that didn't really require a lot of work. And even though it's a single exposure HDR, it's not an over-the-top HDR. I don't have overdone details. My colors are, I think, natural but vibrant. And the amount of light and the distribution of light, I think, looks fine. There's no halos, anything like that. I started like that, and I've ended like that. And that's how you get control over these images. And that's what I'll be talking about in this bundle. And to answer a couple of questions, I've had people ask me, hey, do I really need it? Like, my camera's got great dynamic range. And this is a photo that I shot with a full frame camera a number of years ago. So images that are a bit older, you might need it a little bit more. Today's modern cameras, you don't always need it, but there are times when you really do need it. And I did a recent video about it, which is there, where I showed why you need HDR in a lot of even modern photos. The other thing is people are concerned that HDR produces these cartoonish over-the-top results. Well, there you go. I don't think that's cartoonish or over the top. Also, people have said, hey, I haven't been shooting brackets or exposure brackets. I've just got a bunch of single exposures. Well, this was a single exposure, and I think I made a really huge impact on the base image to the final image. So you don't have to have been using the bracketing in your camera to capture multiple exposures to blend to an HDR. That is the traditional way to do it, but I use it on single exposures all the time. And like this one, I get great results. And also other people have said, hey, I'm using Lightroom. That's fine. HDR Merge works from Lightroom as a plugin with Luminar Neo. So you can take your raw files from Lightroom, ship them over to HDR Merge within Luminar Neo, make your adjustments and send it back. So there's a lot of stuff I'll be talking about in this bundle. And I've got a little bit more information coming really soon about this. And I'm getting this close to launch. I'm just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, just making little changes and tweaks just to make sure this is as informative of a bundle for you as possible. It's coming really soon, and if you weren't up to date already, you can stay up to date on this by joining my newsletter, link down below. That's what I wanted to cover in this video, and just talk about the transformation and not just the why, but also the what and the how. And that's what I'm going into today. Hope this was informative for you. Thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see you soon, and until next time, adios.